recording in progress. Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for coming along from all over the world and all over the place. It's really a delight to be here to get to talk about this book. I've sort of strategically positioned it behind my shoulder so you can see it. I'm supposed to, by the way, say hello to Jack Hopkins. He knows who he is. Somebody asked me to say hello to Jack Hopkins, so thank you for your nice words on the book, Jack. I really loved writing this book. I have worked in museums for a long, long time, speaking with people of all ages from the age of 4 to 99, probably. And this book comes out of that experience. But I have to give a very hearty shout out to J. Daniel Wright, who did the amazing illustrations for the book. My little daughter is nearly 2. She likes this book. She calls it Daddy's Cat Book. The thing is, the cat bit is the bit I didn't do. So I keep telling her, no, no, no. Jay is the guy behind the cat. I did the other stuff, but she likes the cat. Anyway, maybe she'll grow out of it. So this session really is all about the ideas in the book. Now, look, I'm not going to talk about any of the pictures that are in the book because I think that's a separate thing. But I'm just going to talk about how to be an art rebel, like how you can be kind of independent in the way you think about art, how you can do it your own way. And I've got some tricks for you today. This is all about tricks you can use when you go to an art museum, because, you know, art museums, there are a lot of them and they're all different. You can have an art museum like this, which is from paintings floor to ceiling. Now, I know we have an international crowd. This is quite UK centric, but when you see something like this, you can imagine the kind of place I'm talking about. So paintings floor to ceiling, ancient sculptures lining the walls, large, huge paintings dominating the walls like that one. Sometimes something a bit more modern. This is St. Ives in Cornwall, Tate St. Ives, paintings, and sculptures. So much to see, so overwhelming sometimes. You can have an installation. This is in Baltic, in Gateshead, Newcastle. Quite a lot to take in. And if you're not, you know, I'm somebody who's been going to museums and galleries professionally as well as out of my own enjoyment for many, many years. But I know many people don't feel that way. And they think when they go to these things, wow, what do I do? There's all these pictures to see. There's too much to see. Sometimes even you might be in a situation where there's not only too much art, there's too many people. Too many people. That's kind of unusual these days, but things are getting back to that now. So if you went to a museum like that one, you'd be surrounded by people you can't get through, you can't see the pictures. It can be a stressful experience. There's another museum full of people taking selfies, taking photos. You can't get through it. You might start to think to yourself, what is all the fuss about? What is all the stress about? Why is this man sitting on his friend's shoulders to take a photograph of a painting from several meters away? It's just not going to look good, I'm afraid. So I think that the world of art and the world of museums can be overwhelming. It can be intimidating. It can be hard to know where to begin. But my message to you today is, quite simply, don't panic. Now, you may say to yourself, I don't panic. But I've met many people who do in this situation. They think, how am I going to see everything? What are the things I'm supposed to see? How am I supposed to feel when I look at this stuff? What am I supposed to learn when I look at this stuff? And I'm here to tell you, don't panic and try as much as you can to steer your own way through enjoying looking at works of art by being an art rebel. Let me tell you exactly what I mean. Now, I got some strategies. One of my strategies is when I go to a museum or a gallery or wherever it might be, I find the funniest thing in the room. Now, sometimes the funniest thing in the room is a sculpture or a painting or a video or an installation. It could be anything. But the funny thing is something that's going to maybe keep you interested, make you want to stay. Make you want to stay with that picture and think about it. So this is a room in a museum in London. This is a room in the National Portrait Gallery. National Portrait Gallery is At the moment it's closed. They're renovating it. They're changing the architecture a little bit, but when it reopens, you'll see what I mean. And the National Portrait Gallery is a huge museum with thousands of paintings and photographs and sculptures in it. Way too many to see in one day. So what do? What you do is you try and make it fun for yourself by asking yourself a question: what is the funniest thing in this room? Now, look, this is my personal opinion, but I happen to think that that big painting you can see next to the bench, that is the funniest painting in the room. Let's have a look at that. Now, I think this painting is very funny. Now, a lot of people will go to an art gallery like the National Portrait Gallery, and they'll be very serious. These people are sometimes called adults. Adults tend to be quite serious about things like this. It's a painting of a famous person from the past. That person was the King of England. His name is Charles II. But all that stuff doesn't explain why I think this painting is funny. And I'll tell you why I think it's funny. It's because of his legs. It's because this man with the big black wig sitting on a throne has pulled up his, I don't know what to call that. There's a name for it. He's pulled up his clothing and he's showing you that he's wearing tights and he wants you to see what his legs look like. Now, wait a minute. He doesn't just want you to see it. He wants the person who painted the picture to definitely paint his legs. When he sat down and he got himself all ready in his throne and he was getting into position, this man, the King, Charles II of England, pulled up his clothing and sat there. And I imagine there was a little awkward moment between the king and the painter. The painter said, you want me to paint your legs, Your Highness? And of course, the king would have said, yeah, that's why I did this. My legs are, in fact, fantastic legs. They are amazing legs. Now, we might look at this and say, those are not so amazing. We might look at those and say, it'd be pretty funny if the Queen did that. But the king doing it at this time, very serious business. So the king looks a little bit ridiculous. Now, when the artist made this painting, he definitely wasn't planning on making the king look ridiculous. I mean, if he had deliberately tried to make the king look ridiculous, he definitely would have been in trouble. The best thing that would have happened is that he wouldn't have been paid. The worst thing that would have happened is that he would have lost a body part, probably a head. And we've only got one of them. And so you don't want to be losing that. So he wasn't making fun of the king. Instead, he just did what the king wanted him to do. King wanted to show off his legs because he thought he had fabulous legs. That is, in fact, the truth of it. By the way, little side note, I've put the names of the artists on these pictures because I think it's sometimes quite useful to know that. But that's all the information I've got, just because I don't want my screen and your screen to be crowded up with words. A little extra side note. When you go to a museum or gallery, there's a lot to read, right? There's a lot to read. There's a lot of text written on the wall. Sometimes there's little pieces of writing next to the pictures. Sometimes you have something in your ear, an audio guide, and it's telling you stuff. You hear words, you see words. I don't really go to an art gallery to read, to be honest. I go to an art gallery to look. So I'm interested in all that stuff, but I really want to focus on is the picture itself. Now, the second really funny thing about this picture, I think, you might disagree, is what's going on behind the king's head. Yeah, he wants to show off his legs, but what is this doing? Because when I saw this, I thought, that is strange. Now, I don't want this talk to be too rude, but the fact is, and this is in the book as well, the fact is that there's a lot of naughty, strange, hilarious stuff going on in these old paintings. Now, if you're a very serious person, interested in the history of the King of England, you would ignore stuff like this. But the fact is, you can do what you like with a work of art. The whole point is to use your imagination. So when you see something like this, you see a funny little boob, I'm going to use the word boob there, apologies, maybe we can edit that out, specifically pointed out with some light colours, so you definitely see it, right above the king's head. I think to myself, what is the artist trying to say about the king? Then I remind myself, well, hey, of course he has to do what the king wants to do. Does that mean the king specifically said, I want to have the boob next to my head? I want it to be lit up so everyone can definitely see it? Maybe not. A serious art historian would tell you that's definitely not the case. But if you're an art rebel, and if you're using your imagination, and you're free to use it with art, then you can start thinking these slightly naughty and ridiculous things with art. But the whole point of it is to make it more fun to look at art, because it really should be fun to go to a museum or gallery. With those pictures I showed you before, with people climbing on top of each other to see a painting, no one likes that, not even the people climbing up like that. So we have to get to a situation where we actually enjoy going to museums or galleries and looking at art, because they're supposed to be fun to look at, they're supposed to be enjoyable. But you know, there's lots of other paintings of people relaxing or lounging on chairs. I just found two that I liked, that I think go really nicely with the picture of the king. Two other people relaxing or leaning back. Because the thing is, your body language, what you do with your body, says so much about you, doesn't it? Of course we know that's true. If I met you for the first time when I was like this, I think you'd probably think, God, he's a bit weird. Is he all right? Maybe he's a little bit aggressive. Maybe I don't really want to meet him. But if I came up to you and, hey, that's what I normally do. Hey, good to meet you. And I was very open. You might think, God, he is a bit weird. Or you might think, he seems like a nice guy. I mean, you might not think that. Anyway, the way you express yourself, there's loads of ways to do it. You can do it with your clothing. You can do it with your haircut. You can do it with your expression on your face. You can do it with your clothing. I said clothing already. You can do it with where you are. But principally, I think really important is your pose. So I like the king looking relaxed, even though he probably wasn't that relaxed because he had to sit still for a painting. I like this guy in the middle looking very, what you might call debonair, which is a great word to start dropping into your sentences, debonair. And on the right-hand side, this woman who is a famous writer called Zadie Smith, who also in the National Portrait Gallery, in the same building, leaning back. She's got a kind of map of London behind her, leaning back, looking very relaxed, but looking very confident in a way that I think looks fantastic with that painting of the king. Totally different person, totally different time period, but something similar. Her clothes, her feet, her hair, her expression, the way she looks at you from the side, all those things tell us so much about what she's like as a person. Now, this is all just using our imaginations as we look at these things, right? I started with the funniest thing in the room, which is this painting with this strange legs, but it made me start to think about other pictures. So I think finding funny or ridiculous things is a really good way in and a way to stop panicking about the experience of being in an art gallery. I've got more. How about this for a strategy? I like doing this one as well. Find the weirdest thing in the room. So you can find the funniest thing. How about the weirdest thing? Now, this is from the British Museum in London. I'm sorry, it's quite London-centric. I know that we are international crowd. If you see this and you think, oh, it's all about London, just transpose it to a museum near you or one that you've been to. So look, I think this is pretty weird. Look, everyone's having a nice time. They're quite serious. You know, they're looking at these things. But right in the middle of all of these people with clothes on is a person without clothes on. Yeah, it's a statue, but at the same time, it just strikes me as kind of strange and interesting and kind of weird. The name of the statue is at the bottom there. It's called Lely's Venus. We don't know who made it, but it's made a very, very, very long time ago. It's a Roman statue. I've got a little bit in the book, or a chapter in the book about Roman and Greek statues, which are always fascinating and quite bizarre, and more bizarre than we sometimes realize. In a museum environment, things can feel pretty serious. that's until we really start to think about them. Because isn't it strange that you can walk around this statue, and as you can see, she's not in the best condition. She's old, you know, she's been around for a very, very long time, but she's got these marks in her just because she's been moved around from place to place, and people weren't always that careful about art in the past. But you can walk all the way around her, and there's her bum right there, and there's her face right there. And you can get very close to her, and it's a slightly strange experience. Well, again, something I talk about in the book is this idea about pictures of naked people. Now, as I say, I've worked in museums for a very, very long time. When I talk with adults with something like this, they would talk about ancient Rome, or they would talk about the goddess Venus. When I talk to young children about this, the first thing they ask about is, why isn't she wearing any clothes? Now, I've been asked that question so many times in art galleries that I've developed lots of different answers to it, depending upon the age of the person who asked the question. Sometimes my answer is because artists wanted to show off, because making a human body without clothes on is harder than making one with clothes on. And that's kind of true. Another answer might be people kind of like looking at naked people sometimes. And that's also true as well. Sometimes I might say, this was the taste at the time. This is what people liked. They thought it was very civilized and sophisticated to have this kind of style. That's also true. All these things are true, but it doesn't stop it being weird, does it? It doesn't stop it being strange. And I think in order to make works of art exciting, especially really old ones like these, we have to remind ourselves of how weird they are. Now, this is a statue of a goddess who's covering herself up, but not totally covering herself up, because you can still see her bum. She hasn't completely covered herself. It is a statue of a goddess. She doesn't need to wear clothes because she doesn't get cold. That's true. But, you know, there are other reasons as well, as I say. But I do think this thing of people not wearing clothes in art galleries is quite interesting. And I want to show you two pictures by female artists, by women artists, and I've censored that one on the right, who do things in a slightly different way to remind us that it's kind of interesting that there are all these statues in the past of people, especially women, not wearing clothes. So on the left-hand side, that's also in the National Portrait Gallery in London. That's a woman called Dame Laura Knight, who's a brilliant 20th century painter. And that's a painting of herself painting a female life model, a woman in the room. She's doing the painting. So on the left-hand side, you can see the painting she's painting. On the right-hand side, you can see the model, but the whole thing is a painting, and she's got her back to you. So it's a really fantastic, complicated thing where you see somebody looking at somebody else in a really curious kind of way. On the right-hand side, that's one of my top artists of all time. Her name is Alice Neal, American painter, really great, worth checking out. Here she's painting a man a little bit the way that men used to show women, lying down, looking very relaxed. But in this case, it's a very, very hairy man. And it's a hairy man who doesn't look like a model. He doesn't look like a bodybuilder. He doesn't look like an athlete. He just looks like a gangly dude. I always think he looks a bit like a geography teacher. Not that I ever saw any geography teachers without their clothes on, you understand, but something about him makes me think of geography teachers. Nevertheless, it's interesting that these artists, these female artists, seem to think those old sculptures are pretty weird as well. So thinking that art is strange is not just a kind of silly thing. Actually, it can lead to some really cool and original ideas in art. People saying, it's kind of weird that there are all these naked people. It's kind of weird that all these naked people look sort of perfect. The truth is that nobody really does. So let's show some bodies that look more like normal bodies, or even geography teacher bodies. So apologies to any geography teachers out there. So that is another way we can think about things in a kind of cool and interesting way, I think. Oh, what about this one? Find the most boring thing in the room. Now, this is a challenge sometimes, isn't it? Sometimes it's a challenge. Find the most boring thing. Let me tell you, you're not supposed to think art is boring. You're not supposed to go to an art gallery and think things are boring. No one ever admits that. I never admit that. Artists I know never admit that. Other art people never admit that. But it's got to be true, hasn't it? It's got to be true that some of the things they see, they're bored by. Now, my confession is, when I see a room like this, for me, it's the opposite of boring, because I love really, really plain, basic art. Sometimes I'm in the mood for a really over-the-top painting with loads of colors, with loads of things going on. Sometimes I want something plain and simple. The truth is that we all have tastes like that, don't we? Sometimes I really want a hot curry, really with a lot of flavor. Sometimes I want to finish my meal going, sometimes I want a really simple salad, really simple. So it's really plain. The ingredients are really simple and crisp, nothing cooked, all that. Just want a bit of range. And looking at art is just the same. You know, you could spend your life only looking at really over the top things. You could spend your life looking only at really simple things. But I feel that would be a bit narrow. I feel you've got to have a bit of a range in your experience. So this is a room in Tate Modern in London. Again, sorry, it's London, England, but there are many museums like this, and you might even have had an experience like this before. You might think, oh boy, all white pictures. Boring. But the truth is that boring can be interesting if you give it time. Anything boring can be made interesting if you pay attention to it in a different way. Boring things like waiting in a doctor's waiting room, waiting for a bus, something I seem to spend a lot of time doing in London, not complaining, you know, just saying. That can be made interesting depending upon how you see it. You can sit there and go, oh, the bus isn't coming. Or you can go, I have noticed this. I've just noticed that. I'm going to sing a song to myself. I'm going to look at what that person's wearing. You can change things through looking at them in a different way. That's what we've got to do. So find the most boring thing in the room. That's a great challenge in an art gallery. What's the most boring picture? And I guarantee you that it's not going to be surrounded by people. I guarantee you it's going to be overlooked. Now, I think the most boring thing in this room of pictures, now I love these pictures, but I see that they're boring. You know, I see that people would start yawning when they go to a room like this. Like, oh, where are the colors? But remember, it's like a salad. It's like a really simple salad. It doesn't have to have loads of flavor. It doesn't have to be a madras. It can just be something really simple. So I've chosen this one. I love that picture. It's there. You can see it, right? You can see it there. But that is not like the painting of the king, right? Not at all. The painting of the king's got a lot going on. The painting of the king has got a lot of humor and silliness, and there's a lot of that in older paintings, Western European paintings. Something like this, really plain. You might be yawning right now. I hope you are, because you've got to go through the boredom and out the other side. Now, this is a really simple work by a British artist called Mary Martin. Really, I think, gorgeous, very, very simple. But very, very simple. It's just about the relationships between different things. It's about noticing the shadows. You can really get into the shadows, the different depth of the shadows, the different shape of the shadows, the actual way that if I said the outside square is white, it's not actually the same white as the little squares in the middle. So I'm going to have to use different words for the different parts of the painting. Off-white, a bit grey-white, a bit white-grey, a bit black-grey-white, all those different things. And now if I keep looking at this, I see yellow, I see purple, I see red. How is that possible? It's because the colours are in there. It's just really subtle. And the only way to enjoy it is to take your time. There's just no other way to do it. If you walk through that room quickly, going, get me out of here, room full of white pictures, you were never going to get anything from it anyway. Because unless you're going to give it time, you're just not going to get anything from it. It's the same with any work of art. It's the same with any book. You can see some books behind me. None of them I've read. They're all for show. Those books, unless you read a book, it's just a thing. When you read it, it comes to life. With a work of art, unless you stop and look at it, it's just a thing. But when you look at it, it becomes something different. So this is like, for me, it's like a beautiful salad. It's got simple relationships between the parts. Some things are nearer, some things are farther. And it really, for me, does something wonderfully calming to my mind. It reminds me of the little component parts that every picture is made from. It breaks it down to its basic building blocks. And it's a beautiful experience. That's the other word I want to say to you, is that works of art are things. And then when you look at them, they become experiences. Books are things. When you read them, they become experiences. A film or a movie or a TV show is just a thing until you watch it, and then it becomes an experience. So we want to turn things into an experience. But why would anyone do things like this anyway? Why would anyone make works of art that isn't of anything? Well, here are some examples of artists, a bit like Mary Martin, who made works of art which aren't about anything at all. When you look at these things, you're not being asked to say, oh, looks like a cloud, or looks like a landscape, or looks like a carpet, or the patterns on the buses in London. We shouldn't really say those things. I mean, we can say those things, because the whole point of this kind of thing, of what we call abstract art in Western art, is to make images of things you can't really see. So let's think about that. Things you can't really see. Now, Charles II, the King of England, is someone you can see. He's a physical object, not an object, a person. He's a physical thing, right? All the pictures I've shown you so far, physical things that you can see. But what are some things in our lives that are important to us, but we can't see? I mean, when I think of things that are important to me, I think of my family and friends and, things like that, my cats. I think of those things. But then when I think of other things that are important to me, they're things I can't see. They're things like love. They're things like the feeling of missing somebody. There are emotional things, but there are spiritual things for many people too. Those are things you can't see. But if we're going to keep it kind of simple, music is something we can't see. Music is made on instruments. We can see the instruments, but we can't see the music. So paintings like these are a bit like those experiences. The experience of music, the experience of an emotional experience, or the experience of a spiritual experience. Now, in my book, I talk about quite stupid things, like the smell of a fart. That's something you can't see. Or the feeling of jumping into cold water. That's something you can't see. But it's still something important in your life. So you could make art that is not about things you see, but about things you feel. So I'm showing you Bridget Riley in the left, Helen Frankenthaler in the middle, and Willem de Kooning on the right. They're all totally different. One crisp and clean, the Bridget Riley on the left. One kind of melting and blurred, the one in the middle, the Frankenthaler. And the other one slashing and energetic, the de Kooning on the right. If you think to yourself, well, what sort of experiences might that measure up with? What's a melty, floaty experience that might match that one in the middle? What's a dramatic, dynamic, muscular, moving experience like the one on the right? What's that kind of bleepy, bloopy, busy kind of experience on the left-hand side? They could all go with things you already experienced. And that's the way you can let them into your experience of art. It can be really exciting. The other thing I talk about is this whole thing with music. Now, if these things are like music, what kind of music would they be? I mean, if I look at that Bridget Riley, I already said bleepy bloopy. Now, that to me looks like lots of electronic noise going off in almost random ways, with a kind of system, with a kind of melody that takes a little bit of a while to come clear. The more you look at that, the more you start to notice patterns in the colors and the lines that she's using. With the Frankenthaler, that kind of warm, flowing feeling that I get from that, I might associate with a certain kind of instrument sound. I like the sound of the bassoon. I like the sound of something that's deep, and a cello, and like rich and resonant, and a saxophone. It just kind of feels that way. Whereas the de Kooning to me feels really raging and energetic. It feels like somebody bashing the drums really aggressively or bashing the guitar aggressively. Three totally different kinds of music, three totally different experiences in these three totally different works of art. What's that music like? Wow, this music to me is extremely calm, very, very slow, glacial music that makes your heart slow down, makes your breathing slow down, kind of calm and relaxed. Very different experience to these ones. So when we look at these things, they all have their own very different kind of feeling to them. But look, you're not going to be told these things on the pieces of text on the walls next to the paintings. You're just not going to. The museum isn't going to say, imagine what piece of music goes with this. The museum isn't going to say, imagine what kind of emotional feeling or sound might go with this. You have to do that yourself. And the thing about being an art rebel, I have to tell you, is it involves quite a bit of work on your behalf, because the museum isn't going to do it for you. But if you put in the work, if you go and stand in front of these things, you think in these creative ways, it's going to be so much fun. And I tell you that's true because I do it myself all the time. So what have I got? I'm starting to round things off and finish up. I think this is the most important one. I talked about finding things that are boring, finding things that are weird, and finding things that are funny. All those things are good. But most important of all is to look closer than anyone else is looking. People are rushing from room to room. You don't have to do that. You can stop and slow down. Now, this is a painting that needs to be looked at slowly. This is one of my top artists who's in the book. Her name is Clara Peters. Clara Peters was around 400 years ago. She was a very successful artist, painting things like this. We call them still life paintings. Sometimes she made still life paintings of pieces of cheese. That's in the book. Big hunks of cheese. People love those because people love cheese. I mean, I love cheese. But the thing about painting cheese is like you have to keep getting new cheese because it keeps decaying and mice keep eating it. Got the same problem if you've got a vase full of flowers. A vase full of flowers like that one looks great, doesn't it look nice? That is not one vase of flowers. Clara kept having to get new flowers because as she was painting it, the flowers were dying, the petals were dropping off. She doesn't show that to us, but you know that's what happened. The painting isn't really exactly what she saw. Let's not think that that's the case, because with these paintings, you may think, wow, they look so real, they look like photographs, but they're nothing like photographs. They're actually more like diaries of a long period of time that it took to make it just right. What Clara does is she puts her flowers in there, the flowers that look fresh and beautiful. She's got a little stack of coins. Don't know why she put those there. She's got shells. I mean, Clara Peters was from Holland. So those might have been shells she found on the seashore. They might have been shells she bought in the market. In any case, they look pretty amazing. And she laid them down there almost as though she didn't really care. But of course she really did. And the main event is those two amazing goblets that are there on the table. Now, the thing is, if you looked at this painting in the gallery and you whizzed past onto the next thing, because there were so many things to see, you thought, we better get moving. I'm getting hungry. We've got to go see everything. You would miss something really important if you did that. If you zoomed past it, what you wouldn't see is what Clara does in the painting on the right-hand goblet. Some of you might have seen that already. If we go zoom in, you can see that she painted herself in the reflections on that amazing goblet. She painted herself. Now look, how many times did she paint herself? Maybe 5 times. At the top, they look like bubbles, but it's actually meant to be made out of brass, I think, probably, or bronze. Top, 2 in the middle, and 2 at the bottom. And in every single one, what can you see? You can see the window behind her. So we know she painted this inside a room. I mean, that's not a surprise, but anyway, she did during the daytime. Daylight was coming in. She was there. The light hits her face from the side. And she's holding her palette and her brushes. The palette is where she mixes her colors, right? So she was there, and she wanted everyone who saw this painting to know who painted it. Now, how do you do that if you're an artist? You might write your name somewhere. She did that too. She signed her name. You can actually maybe just about see it if you've got a big screen. Right at the bottom left corner, there's a little inscription there that tells you who painted it, but much better to put yourself in it. Now, sometimes artists painted themselves, right? There are plenty of paintings, what we call self-portraits, where you see the artist's face. Sometimes the artist has a very flamboyant and over-the-top signature. You know, there's plenty of artists who do that, but Clara is such a trickster. She's so clever, because what she does is she puts herself in there as a little treat to people who really look, which means that if you really look, your reward for looking is Clara from 400 years ago looking at you and giving you a wink or giving you a high five and saying, well done, you passed the test that you need to be able to really look at and enjoy works of art. The test is, are you going to put some time into it? Are you going to actually really stop and look? Or are you just going to move on to the next thing? If you really stop and look how great that is. Look how cool that is. Lots of artists do things like this, because what every artist really wants, living or dead, what they want is they want people to really look at what they've done. They want people to put the time in. And I'm here to tell you that if you put the time in, what you get back is fantastic. Now, my last little thing, because I know I can see my little thing going off and I can see there are messages coming in. The last thing I'll say, because I hope this has been fun to listen to, is that the most important thing of all is to have fun. Now, people say that all the time, don't they? You've got to have fun. Sometimes going to a museum is not that much fun. I get it. Sometimes it feels like going to school. Sometimes it feels like going to work. Sometimes it feels like something you have to do. You have to be dragged into the museum. Sometimes you think, oh, so boring. The whole point of it is that every single picture or photograph or sculpture or video, whatever it is waiting for you. It's waiting for you to put some time in, to think for yourself, to find things that are funny or that are weird, and to really enjoy that so that you can feel close to these things. The artists I've shown you today, I haven't shown you, I don't think, I've shown you any artists that are still alive. So these artists left artworks behind for new generations like us to see and to enjoy them. So I thought I'd end with these three pictures. I thought that painting on the left-hand side was really hilarious. That's an artist who couldn't draw teeth very well. I think it's because the guy couldn't hold still. He couldn't hold his smile. So the artist had to kind of make it up. In the middle, there's I love that painting of a little doggy by a German guy called Martin Kippenberger, who's an artist I really love. And on the right-hand side, my final little message to you is in this medieval gargoyle from the side of a church, which is that you have to be ready not to take everything seriously. You have to be ready to go sometimes to all the things around you so that you can see things fresh and have a really great time. Now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to look at those, or maybe I'll keep sharing it and I can look at the chat. There you can go. I can do that. Fantastic. So I'm going to answer those questions and have a look at those. Don't panic, Saz says, absolutely. No panicking.
Well,
yeah,
hello.
Oh, hi. Should I look at these? Should I look at these questions, Saz? Or
well, I think Matilda's just going to mention a few to you. Actually,
fine,
she's just going to ask you some questions.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Sandra, Ben.
Kind. Be kind.
Well, hello. I'm back. Well, I know that we had a couple. One was just, do you have a favorite gallery or museum that you'd want to go to? And do you have a favorite piece of art?
Oh, it's a good question. Okay.
Impossible question.
That is very difficult. It is very difficult. I mean, my absolute favorite place is a gallery in Venice, Italy, which is called the Accademia Gallery. It's a big place. It's a little bit, it's so great. Hardly anyone goes there. It's a bit falling apart. It's a bit got wonky floors, and it's a bit shambly, but it's got great stuff in it, and it's really, really fun to walk around in, and it's got beautiful stuff in it. So that is my probably top one. I love that place. I mean, I love going to kind of any place, to be honest with you, but that is my top one, is the Accademia Museum in Venice. And my favorite work, I mean, that is tricky.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's a good one. I mean, I think I always change my mind. I mean, I am actually doing my PhD at the moment about an artist, but he's not in the book. His name is Philip Guston. He's worth looking at for sure. But my favorite work of art, oh boy, I don't know. I actually don't really have an answer for it. Should I choose one of the ones I talked about today? No.
Why don't
I'm really
The Laughing Cavalier.
Let's say the Laughing Cavalier. Thanks, Saz. Yeah, let's say the Laughing Cavalier. I do like the Laughing Cavalier. If you're in London, there's an exhibition of that artist coming up. He's great, and he does really funny paintings. The guy who made the Laughing Cavalier. His name is Frans Hals. Now, Frans Hals did lots of very funny paintings, deliberately funny paintings of people having a good time a lot of the time. Not always, but a lot of the time. So I really recommend having a look at him. So yeah, let's go for that. Let's say Frans Hals, the Laughing Cavalier. Thanks for that.
We've had another question just from Shelley. Did you enjoy making Art Rebel the book?
See, that is a great question to be asked. Thank you for that question. I loved doing that book, Art Rebel. I loved writing it. I had a great time putting it together. It didn't feel like work to do it. It took quite a long time, actually, that book. And the reason it took quite a long time is that we kept changing our minds. That's me and the publishing company kept changing our minds about what works of art should be in it. So things went in and things went out. And the things that went out, I'm saving for another book in a few. I'm going to come back to that. But yeah, I loved doing it. I loved doing it because, you know, I work as an art historian. I have to give serious lectures sometimes, and I have to write serious things sometimes. And it's great fun not to have to be serious sometimes about this stuff, because it makes me think, you know, when I go to an art gallery, these are the kind of things I'm thinking. I promise you, I am thinking that is hilarious, or I'm thinking that is weird, or I'm thinking all those things. I mean, somebody like Lee, I'm not supposed to admit that, but I do. And so that's why it was so fun to write.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. And so we've had another one actually of, do you like doing art yourself? Do you draw when you go to galleries? Are you an artist behind closed doors? And
also a great question, especially relevant for the big draw. I started, I got into writing about art by making art. So I started out as painting, and then I got into writing because I also really like writing, and it sort of moved more towards writing than painting. But I do draw, yes. I haven't painted for quite a while, but I do draw, and I definitely draw in galleries, and I really recommend that, by the way. It doesn't, because when you're drawing, the thing to remember about drawing is that it doesn't have to be good. When artists make drawings, any of these artists I've shown you, when they made drawings, they weren't necessarily making drawings to show people. They were making drawings because drawing is a way of thinking, and I use that myself. So I draw all the time to think things through. When I go to an art gallery, like if I'm writing something, I think, I do little drawings. When I go to an art gallery, I often draw something. And when I draw something, what's really good about that is that it means you have to stand still and look at it. It means you can't be walking around. It means you have to stand still and you kind of have to be quiet. It's quite hard to have a chat. I find it quite hard to have a chat when I'm drawing. So when I'm sitting there drawing something, it means I really, really look at it properly.
yeah.
And that's brilliant, because after that, you know, you feel like you've got a really strong relationship with that artwork because you've spent so long with it. So I think it's super cool to do that. And remember, like, a lot of people are really self-conscious about drawing, and it's only because they think their drawings have to be good. But you have to remember, drawing doesn't have to be good.
Yeah.
it feels good to do it. You don't have to worry about the end product. You have to worry about or think about the process. That's what it's all about, really, I think.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And so we've had one here from Donna that's, are your friends artists?
Well, as they say, some of my best friends are artists. Yes, I do. Yes, they are. Yes, indeed. I hang out with artists. They're perfectly nice. There's nothing. You don't have to be. You don't have to cross the street to avoid artists. They're all very nice. Sometimes very nice people. Yeah, I know a lot of people who are artists, and I want to make this because I thought to myself, what do I want to make sure I've said in this talk? But they. Being an artist is a real job. Like, being an artist is a job. It's not a hobby. It can be a hobby, but being all these artists I've shown you, that is what they did for their job, for the whole of their life. That's what they did every day. They didn't paint when they came home from the office. That was their office. So we have to remember that art is a really wonderful and important thing. It's an important job to have. Now, if you want to be an artist nowadays, it is quite hard. So I know lots of artists who also are teachers or who also do other things, or they help other artists or whatever it might be. They work in museums. But I do know a lot of people who are artists. And if you're an artist, if you like making art, it's kind of just all you want to do. So you do whatever you can to make sure you can just keep on making art. Yeah. So yeah, I do know artists. I've got some of their artworks on the wall, but not visible in this Zoom presentation, I'm afraid. It would look a bit questionable if I started showing people's art on the back wall of my Zoom. So anyway,
absolutely fair enough. And how about your next book? Can we hear a little bit about that?
That is the question of questions, because I got to work out what that's going to be. I have a book coming out at the end of this month, which is for an older audience, although young people can definitely read it, which is called How to Enjoy Art. That is coming out it's been delayed a bit. I think it's right at the end of September. How to Enjoy Art is kind of a bit like Art Rebel, but for an older audience in a way. That's the next one that's coming out. In terms of a book like Art Rebel, I'm at the phase of just starting to think about it. So I don't really know what it's going to be, but it's going to be like Art Rebel. It's going to have that quite silly, ridiculous sense of humor that unfortunately I have, and I have to use in the book. So yeah, there'll be more. I don't know what it's going to be. Maybe it'll be about more modern stuff. Maybe it'll be just different kinds of things. We'll see. I don't really know.
Oh, well, that sounds very exciting.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, well, I think that's, we've had one more. How does art make you feel? But I mean, I guess, yeah, you did kind of cover a lot of that. Yeah. How does art make you feel? And then it says, when I'm anxious, it makes me feel calm.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. No, I'm so happy when people say stuff like that, to be honest with you. I mean, I think for me, art is like music, and I just listen to pop music or like, just songs or whatever, pop songs. And songs can make you feel lots of different ways, can't they? They can make you feel happy, they can make you feel calm, they can make you feel anxious, they can make you feel energetic. Like, works of art are just the same. They can do totally different things. There are works of art that make me anxious, but I like them, but I don't look at them all day. There are works of art that make me calm, which I like, but I don't look at them all, just like I don't listen to the same song over and over again. So I think it is all about making you feel things. I think it can make you feel so many different things. And also the thing to remember is that you feel things your own way with works of art. No one can tell you how to feel with a work of art. It's about your personal relationship to what you're looking at, I think. So I think it's so important to talk about that stuff, because I think, I feel exactly the same way as you. There are certain pictures, when I go to the National Gallery in London, there are certain pictures I go to that immediately just make me feel like, straight away.
Yeah.
It's great. And it's just like certain songs I put on, and it just always makes me feel good, and I'm sure everybody has that,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. This has been so fantastic. It's been so great to have you. I've just seen that Sandra's popped in the chat, which I think is a really lovely idea. If anyone does any drawings inspired by this session, if you go to a gallery inspired by this session and you see something funny, take a photo and tag us using hashtag #ArtRebelArtClub. Just let us know. We would love to see that. So yeah, do Ben agrees. Yeah,
Definitely.
we would love to hear about about what you've seen that made you laugh or that is weird. Anything like that. Do let us know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't wait to see that.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much, Ben. This has been amazing.
You're really welcome. Thank you, everybody, for coming along. I appreciate it.
Oh, definitely not the last Art Rebel Art Club, I suspect.
Hooray. Hooray.
Oh,
thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Take care. See you all some other time.
Yes.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.